breaking news from RTV6.
And we continue to follow that breaking news at noon. The police raid on the home of Subway pitchman Jared Fogle. State and federal authorities swarming his Zionsville home this morning, and the case may be connected to child pornography. Want to start our team coverage this midday right now at that home. RTV6's Eric Cox there most of the morning. Eric.
Yeah, Mark, we're here on hand on the 4500 block of Woods Edge Drive in Zionsville here this afternoon as a team, I'm told, is called the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force has been investigating for nearly 6 hours here outside of Subway spokesman Jared Fogle's home here in Zionsville. Now, I've watched as the force has taken several items from out of the Subway spokesman's home and dropped them off in their mobile lab, a big white trailer parked right out in front of the Fogle's home here, and I'm told that unit's outfitted with all of the latest technology so that they're able to analyze anything they might see inside the home, whether it's a laptop, USB, you name it, analyze it right here, right now on the scene without having to leave. Now, with that being said, another interesting thing that I've seen out here is agents lead a Labrador, a dog, yes, into Jared's home, into Jared Fogle's home, and I'm told that lab is an electronic sniffing dog, one who state police tell us is just one of 3 in the entire nation with the kind of training he has. I'm told that dog is able to sniff out electronics and find sensitive things that they think might be useful to them in their investigation. An investigation we haven't learned much about just yet. We actually have spoken with FBI spokeswoman Wendy Osborne, who tells us that, yes, a task force is on hand here investigating and probing the home, raiding the home as they have been for 6 hours, but she won't say why. I spoke to several other residents, several of the community members here in the neighborhood, including one young man who lives just right across the street from Jared Fogle and his family. He has for years. He tells me that he is absolutely shocked to hear this news about just this raid here this morning, here in this quiet neighborhood, a community that doesn't often have much commotion at all. Here today with several news crews outside, several FBI agents, as I said, state and local agencies on hand here, causing quite a commotion as they have been for 6 hours. Now, even with the rain coming down so heavily, things don't seem to be coming to a wrap here anytime soon. So stick with RTV6 for the latest developments on this story out of Zionsville. For now, I'm reporting live here in Zionsville. Eric Cox, RTV6.
Our Eric Cox telling us what he's seeing right there, and a lot of resources being put on that scene this midday. I want to bring in our Call 6 investigator unit working on this breaking news. I want to talk to Rafael Sanchez. And Rafael, I know you've been working your resources this morning, talking to many people, including federal investigators. So bring us up to speed with what you found this midday.
We've been working this since the very beginning as we continue to follow this breaking news story here at RTV6. On the record, the FBI is letting its actions in Zionsville speak for itself. They're working the case, and officially the agency is saying nothing, as we just heard from Eric Cox. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office decided against issuing a statement about what is happening there in Boone County. Sources tell me that this is all part of the investigation into the guy that once ran Jared Fogle's foundation, Mark.
That's right, and we actually heard Eric mention of that man's name, Russell Taylor. That is the former executive director of the Jared Foundation. So what criminal charges is he facing? Bring us up to speed on where that case stands.
So, Mark, let's talk about Russell Charles Taylor. Taylor ran the Jared Foundation. I've been looking at tax records you see here dating back to filing year 2010. And per the tax records, the foundation was focused on educating kids about obesity. Now, in May, the federal government accused Taylor of child pornography. Court documents say investigators found 400 videos of child pornography on computers in Taylor's Indianapolis home. The government says those videos were made between 2012 and 2015 in his current and former homes. He apparently placed hidden cameras inside of bedrooms and bathrooms and secretly recorded multiple nude and semi-nude children. That's what brought about the child pornography allegations and the criminal charges now in federal court. Mark.
So what happens next in Taylor's ongoing case, Rafael?
As you can imagine, there's been a flurry of paperwork being filed in federal court. I got a chance to sample some of that this morning. Last month, the U.S. Attorney's Office asked for extra time on Taylor's criminal investigation. We won't know more about the scope of their case until August the 3rd at the very earliest. That's the court-imposed deadline on this ongoing case, Mark. As you can imagine, many more calls to make, many more sources to speak to.
This view from Skycam 6, federal and state investigators taking items out of Fogle's house this morning, and tonight there are big questions in this case. What were they looking for? And is this case about Fogel? We have live team coverage tonight, and we start with RTV6's Jack Reinhardt.
The Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force launched their raid just after dawn at the upscale Zionsville home of Jared Fogle. The unit, comprised of federal, state, and local investigators, set up a mobile electronic forensics lab in Fogle's driveway, shuttling items and equipment from the home for immediate analysis on site. At one point, investigators brought in a black Labrador retriever, only one of 3 such canines in the nation, capable of sniffing and searching out sensitive electronic components like video cards and zip drives. That this high-profile investigative unit would descend on the home of a seemingly benign national spokesman for the Subway restaurant chain came as a complete surprise to Fogle's neighbors.
Sad. This is a very family. I just moved here 2 weeks ago because I wanted to have neighbors and be more acclimated with families, and people are always out walking their dogs or with their kids. It's very sad.
Sources familiar with the investigation call today's police action a continuing probe of the indictment and arrest of Jared Foundation President Russell Taylor. When federal agents raided Taylor's Far West Side home months ago, they found multiple hidden cameras strategically placed in bathrooms and bedrooms. Investigators also recovered more than 500 videos of children between the ages of 9 and 16 who later told investigators they had no knowledge they were being secretly recorded.
Now, Jared Foundation President Russell Taylor is facing life in prison if convicted of the charges of producing and possessing child pornography. Shortly after his arrest, he attempted suicide in the Marion County Jail. The U.S. Attorney's Office and the Indiana State Police have offered no comment about today's action. And we are hearing from Jared Fogle's attorney, who says Jared has been cooperating and continues to cooperate with law enforcement in their investigation of unspecified charges and looks forward to its conclusion. He has not been detained, arrested, or charged with any crime. And this from Subway: we are shocked about the news and believe it is related to a prior investigation of a former Jared Foundation employee. We are very concerned, and we will be monitoring the situation closely.
We continue our team coverage now with more reaction from people who live in that Zionsville neighborhood. RTV6's Chris Profit is live there with more. Chris?
And this is the home that Jared Fogle shares in this upscale neighborhood with his wife and 2 young children, a famous man who leads a fairly quiet life. And of course, this is a quiet neighborhood. It's filled with families and children, and neighbors say the Fogles, they describe them as a very nice family. Also describing Jared Fogle as reclusive, saying they just never saw him very much. Of course, he shot to fame 15 years ago when he started as a TV spokesman for the Subway sandwich chain. And while the nature of this investigation remains unclear, the police presence here has been shocking to neighbors.
Obviously, I was shocked, to say the least, when I first saw on Twitter that something was happening with Jared, and then we decided to just drive over here.
It was interesting when he moved in, you know, somebody being a spokesperson for a large company like that. It was kind of exciting, and his family was always very sweet, and they were very, you know, good neighbors. We just didn't see him very much, so we figured he'd, you know, just didn't like the spotlight or something like that.
And if Jared Fogle was the object of curiosity from fans and his neighbors tonight, they are curious for a very different reason.
Breaking news from RTV6.
And breaking news we're following this midday. Former Subway spokesperson Jared Fogle appears in federal court. RTV6 obtained legal documents that say that he paid to have sex with minors for years. Call 6 investigates Rafael Sanchez is standing by, learning the details in Jared Fogle's first court appearance, and brings us now the latest.
That's right, we are live outside the federal courthouse. In fact, we are waiting for Jared Fogle to come out of that door within the next few moments or so. Today, we learned that Jared Fogle had been targeting young girls for sex for a number of years. In fact, 14 young girls will now share a settlement worth $1.4 million. The hearing for Jared Fogle was brief, only 15 minutes. He sat with his hands held together on the table as his alleged criminal activity was made public for all to hear. Jared Fogle will leave the federal courthouse in Indianapolis, and as part of his deal, must register as a sex offender. Court documents say his inappropriate involvement with minors may have begun as early as 2007. Federal prosecutors accuse Fogle of receiving child pornography since 2011 from the former head of his foundation, Russell Taylor, who was arrested in May. Prosecutors say that Fogel traveled to New York City from 2010 through 2013 to have sex with minors. The alleged acts occurred in some of New York City's swankiest hotels, including the Ritz-Carlton and the Plaza. Authorities also say that they recovered text messages and other internet communications found in the search of Fogel's home last month in Zionsville.
We're here on the east side of the federal courthouse off of Pennsylvania. I can tell you the man that is waiting with the car that they are going to be taking Jared Fogel out of just started the car. I saw several of the federal police officers who work here at the courthouse, members of Homeland Security. They just went inside and came back out. So it appears that Jared Fogel is getting ready to exit the federal courthouse. The doors are now opening. This is one of Fogel's attorneys who is walking out of the door. There is a U.S. Marshal that is following him out next, along with some of the members of the Homeland Security team. They are going to be escorting Jared Fogel as he walks over to this car. You can see he is in the crowd there along with his attorney, Jeremy Morgales from Chicago. As he comes out, we'll see if he has anything to say. But again, they are going to be escorting him to this car right next to us. I've described the media circus here. You can see it's difficult to even, there is a crush of people here, photographers. One of our photographers I just saw, Eldon Wheeler, he was almost pushed down. But again, look at the crowd of the people here, people with their cell phones trying to document this, along with the dozens of members of the media. So again, Jared Fogel has just been escorted out of the federal courthouse.
Earlier this morning, Jared Fogel, 37, was charged in federal court with one count of receipt of child pornography involving 12 minor victims. He was also charged with one count of traveling to engage in sexual conduct with a minor involving 2 minor victims. Mr. Fogel has notified the court and our office that he intends to plead guilty to those charges.
Today we know there are 14 children who were victimized as a result of this course of conduct. 12 of them were in Indiana, 2 of them were in another state. And all of them were subjected to very serious federal crimes. The federal law protects children under the age of 18 from victimization in child pornography. It also protects them from being used in commercial sex acts. Child prostitution is a very serious federal crime. One of the things this plea agreement does that's groundbreaking is it provides $1.4 million in restitution to these kids, 4 of whom are now adults and in desperate straits. Each of them gets $100,000 so that they can help recover from the effects of what they've been through, paying for treatment, counseling, medical services, getting their life together, educational services, and so forth. That's the largest restitution order I've seen in the Southern District of Indiana. I've done these cases since 1991. I think it's one of the largest in the country.
Take a look at these pictures from moments ago when Jared Fogel was escorted out of the federal courthouse. He was surrounded by U.S. Marshals, members of the Indiana Homeland Security team, along with his defense team. There were so many people here on the streets. It was a huge crowd, members of the media from around the country, not to mention local people, some who were coming out of their offices, others who were standing at the bus stops. We have to tell you, he was heckled as he was walked to that waiting car, and then they drove him away. That is then when his attorney, Jeremy Morgales, went up to the microphone and gave this statement.
I'll be pretty brief. Jared Fogel is going to plead guilty to the charges that were filed earlier today here in the Southern District of Indiana. In so doing, he will fully and completely acknowledge his responsibility for his wrongdoing and his acts and his conduct. He has already volunteered to make restitution to those individuals who have been impacted by his behavior. He knows that restitution can't undo the damage that he's done, but he will do all in his power to try to make it right.
Jared Fogle is still facing a number of court hearings. We are here live at the State Police Post on the city's east side, and behind me, that vehicle behind me may look somewhat familiar. That is the forensic mobile lab that was parked in the driveway of Jared Fogle's Zionsville home back on July the 7th. That is the unit that helped recover some of the evidence that brought about those criminal charges that became public today. We'll go inside that lab coming up on the news at 4:30. But today, we got some revelations about Jared Fogle, the man that encouraged many people to eat healthy, the former Subway spokesperson who encouraged families to eat healthy. He today admitted that he was having inappropriate relationships with young girls. He says that he will get treatment for that, but outside the federal courthouse today, it was simply a media circus. A tip to state police is what led investigators to uncover the activity of Jared Fogle. The former Subway sandwich spokesman is accused of receiving child pornography involving 10 Indiana girls and engaging in sex with at least 2 girls from out of state, at the time under the age of 18. Federal prosecutors say that activity happened in New York City while Fogle was on business trips either for Subway or his foundation.
Let's call this what it is. This is about using wealth, status, and secrecy to illegally exploit children.
Investigators say that Fogle was aware that the former head of his foundation, Russell Taylor, was producing and sharing pornography and said nothing about it. Taylor is in custody in the Marion County Jail. Authorities also don't believe that there are other victims.
Cybercrimes are hard to track and trace, as you heard. You trace evidence, the forensics involved, 47,000 emails and text messages, a lot of information to go through. But the tenacity of our investigator team behind us to be able to whittle through all that muck and mire and think about all the things they had to go through emotionally to bring this to justice said it's important that we stand here today as a team saying thank you to the community and thanking those persons who reach out to those families and put services in place for them as well.
Yeah, this was a really teamwork based with Metro Police, the FBI, and State Police. The U.S. Attorney's Office telling me that if there are other victims, that the plea deal would allow them to reopen this case and file more charges if needed against Jared Fogle. Now, Fogle did not speak today when he left the courthouse after the lunch hour, but his attorney did speak. Here's what Jeremy Margolis had to say about his client.
He knows that restitution can't undo the damage that he's done, but he will do all in his power to try to make it right. Jared also knows that he has a medical problem. He has already sought evaluation by a world-class psychiatrist experienced in these matters, and he will seek appropriate treatment.
You heard there from Jeremy Margolis, the attorney for Jared Fogle. You also heard what could be already the beginning of the defense in this case, in Jared Fogle citing a medical condition for what happened. The U.S. Attorney's Office saying that they will wait to see if that is used. Nonetheless, they will still proceed with what they want, which is at least 5 years in prison. This is what Jared Fogle's family had to say. They released a statement to RTV6 today, and in part, let me read you that statement from his family. It goes to say, "Our family is shocked and profoundly disappointed in Jared's abhorrent criminal behavior, and we are very concerned for the well-being of those affected by his conduct. At the same time, we are gratified that Jared is accepting responsibility for what he has done by agreeing to plead guilty to charges filed today and by volunteering to make restitution to the victims." That is in part what the family had to say. We have the entire statement posted on our website, the80channel.com. This has been a very complicated case for all involved, the FBI, State Police, and of course the Metro Police Department. Let me just give you an idea of what they had to go through. This was really revealed to us today by the U.S. Attorney's Office, a simple demonstration of some of the stuff they had to go through. And let me just say that this is just a limited list because I could not find all the things in which they found child pornography on involving Russell Taylor and Jared Fogle. And what I mean by finding pornography, the materials that were used. For example, investigators had to go through 16 smartphones, 5 tablets, 6 laptops, 6 loose hard drives, 10 memory cards, 46 CDs, and 22 DVDs, and there was so much more. There was also some MP3 players that were involved in the situation. And just to give you the magnitude, Melissa and Jason, we are talking about 27,000 emails, more than 27,000 emails, more than 3,000 videos involved in this investigation, and more than 160,000 texts. All information that all those investigators had to go through before we got the criminal charges released to us today in Indianapolis in the federal courthouse. I'll have much more coming up on this developing story here from the State Police Post on the city's east side. And joining us now is Lieutenant Cohen with the State Police. This is the other side of the lab. This is where a lot of the work gets done. Lieutenant Cohen, thank you so much for allowing us to come into the forensics mobile lab. What happens? We've just saw that in there you interview people. What do you do in here?
At the same time the interviews are being conducted, here up to 4 forensic examiners are extracting information from hard drives, cell phones, digital cameras, and other kinds of storage media.
And so you set up a quick demonstration for us. You can, in fact, do multiple things. You can multitask. So what can we do here, and then what can we do to my right? So here we can...
So what you're looking at right here, essentially, this is one of several devices that can extract data from cell phones and other kinds of cellular devices. At the same time, a different examiner can be working right across the way, and here can be looking and extracting information from a hard drive and other kinds of storage media. And we do this in coordination. So maybe an image or a video is found that might be a produced piece of child pornography found on that hard drive. At the same time, another examiner can try to identify that camera, that cell phone that produced that contraband.
Currently, State Police have two of these vehicles. You're looking for a third. So then what's the value? Because I would imagine that people have all kinds of stuff. They have iPads and iPods and MP3 players. How are you able then to determine what is good and what is bad?
Well, that's actually the value of the vehicle. We can look at a hard drive, look at a computer, and exclude it. Say there is nothing of evidentiary value on that, and return that to the family or the location that we're searching. At the same time, we can very quickly identify evidence, identify contraband, and then we can secure additional evidence. It helps prevent a suspect from destroying evidence he might be storing in the cloud, on the internet, and it also helps us coordinate with the interview of that suspect and with the interview of victims while we're gathering all the evidence at the same time and doing it in coordination.
And you were also telling me really quickly that you're then also able to dismiss evidence if there's an iPad or an iPod that has nothing on it. You can return it to the home, as opposed to in the olden days you'd have to take everything with you and load it up in a truck.
Well, that's exactly right. Before we'd have to take all the computers out of the house. This is where we can exclude that as not being of evidentiary value, not being relevant in the investigation, and return that to a spouse, return that to a child that can then use that computer. The other alternative is we'd have to take that and at some point in the future examine that. That slows down and makes it less efficient for our investigation, and also it burdens someone that doesn't need to be burdened if there's nothing of evidentiary value on that particular device.
Lieutenant Charles Cohen, thank you so much for showing us inside, giving us a sneak peek of the valuable work that State Police, invaluable work that State Police forensics technicians do in this room when they have to begin an investigation. We are live on the city's east side. Rafael Sanchez, now back to you in the studio. His family now responding tonight to RTV6 News, and now at 5 o'clock, let's hear what Jared Fogel's wife has to say. Katie released this statement through her attorney. In part, it says, "Obviously, I am disappointed by the recent developments involving Jared. I'm in the process of seeking a dissolution of marriage. My focus is exclusively on the well-being of my children. Neither I nor my family will have any further comment on the matter. I appreciate respect for my family's privacy during this difficult time." Fogel's family also released a statement to RTV6 this afternoon. They go on to say, "Our family is shocked and profoundly disappointed in Jared's abhorrent criminal behavior, and we are very concerned for the well-being of those affected by his conduct. At the same time, we are gratified that Jared is accepting responsibility for what he has done by agreeing to plead guilty to the charges filed today and by volunteering to make restitution to the victims. We are also gratified that he is seeking medical treatment. We hope that he will become healthy again and are confident that after he serves his sentence, he will continue to make amends. We look forward to the day that he rejoins our family and our society."
And we start here at noon, though, with the Jared Fogel case. The doctors who treated Fogel for sex addiction testifying this morning as we wait to learn how long the former Subway pitchman will spend in prison. RTV6's Julie Persley and Rafael Sanchez are at the courthouse waiting for a decision from the judge. We begin with Julie.
The sentencing hearing has been going on since about 9 o'clock this morning, and it does not look like it will wrap up anytime soon. Now, take a look at this video. This is when Jared Fogle arrived here at the federal courthouse this morning. He had nothing to say. Federal Judge Tanya Walton Pratt accepted his plea agreement this morning. That is where he is pleading guilty to conspiracy for receiving and distributing child pornography and also traveling out of state to engage in commercial sex acts with minors, specifically 2 cases where they say he went to New York to pay for sex with prostitutes who were 16 and 17 years old. Joining us now is Rafael Sanchez. He has been in the courtroom with us throughout the morning. So where does it go from here, Rafael?
Well, we're going to hear from Jared Fogle in a matter of minutes once the closing arguments are made. The defense is now speaking, then the government will make their final words to the judge, and then Jared Fogle will speak. Call 6 has been able to at least look at the situation as to where Jared Fogle will serve time, Julie, and that could be at the federal prison in Englewood, Colorado, which is just south of Denver. It also just happens to be where the former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, is a current resident. Call 6 can also now confirm to you that Jared Fogle has spent time with his children before coming to court today. As you know, he and his wife are in the middle of divorce proceedings, and those proceedings are not final yet. So we'll see what happens. A lot of anticipation now, waiting to see what Jared Fogle will say. His attorneys calling his actions despicable and pathetic, calling it a pathetic crime, but we'll see what Jared Fogle will tell the judge in a matter of minutes.
Breaking news from RTV6.
And now at 5, a day of incredible breaking news. Former Subway spokesman Jared Fogle sentenced to 15.5 years in prison for sex crimes against children.
We begin tonight with Jared Fogle headed to prison. He walked into court this morning and leaving in the custody of federal marshals.
The judge coming down hard on Fogle despite his tearful courtroom plea. Fogle sentenced to 15.5 years in prison, even more than what prosecutors asked for. It came after incredible new details in court, including Fogle spent a minimum of $12,000 a year on prostitutes, and a doctor testifying that Fogle had a compulsive eating disorder, and when he lost weight, he developed a compulsive sexual disorder.
Well, we have live team coverage tonight with Rafael Sanchez and Katie Hines. We start with Rafael live at the federal building. And Rafael, you were there to hear every word in court today. Tell us about it.
I was here, Eric, I was here for all 6 hours, and despite Jared Fogle's tears and his call for mercy, that could not overcome what the judge called an extreme perversion. Jared Fogle walked into the federal courthouse and never walked out. He was taken into federal custody after being sentenced to more than 15 years in prison. Fogle, accused of child pornography and having sex with minors, told the judge that he took full responsibility for his actions and that he was living a life of deception and lies.
So I think he got exactly the same result he would have gotten if he'd not had any money. There is one difference, though. On a regular case, we would never have been able to get all that much restitution for those 14 victims. I mean, we got $1.4 million to help those people get themselves back on their feet, to recover from the devastating effects of all this.
Now, the government did set aside room for the victims to watch today's hearing at the building behind me. That is the federal courthouse. Come to find out that none of the victims wanted to be here today. We did speak to a child advocate who had this to say tonight.
With me being a victim, a survivor of molestation, I want to be the voice because we have been silent for way too long. A lot of people are still in fear, afraid to come out, and I'm just here to be the voice for the survivors and the victims to let them know that it's not your fault and that you're not alone.
I should point out that Jared Fogle will sit at a county jail either in Grayson or Henderson, Kentucky until he is assigned to his federal prison in a couple of weeks, and that prison could be somewhere in Colorado. All new at 6 o'clock. The $7 million, they had a lot of people talking in the courthouse behind me. I'll have much more of that coming up at the top of the hour. That is the latest at 5. Rafael Sanchez, RTV6.
Rafael, question for you. What was the reaction from Jared Fogle as he heard his sentence today?
A lot of tears from him, of course. He was crying in the courtroom. I think it was unexpected, Erica. His attorneys were expecting that he would walk out of that building today, that he would be able to spend Thanksgiving with his family next week. In fact, that was the request from his attorneys, that he would be allowed to go home tonight and report to federal prison, as so often we see in white-collar crimes. In this case, the judge said no way, because one of the victims apparently is suicidal. So the judge, thinking of that victim and also thinking of all the fanfare that comes with him being out in the community, she said it was best for him to be remanded. In other words, to be put in custody. And tonight he is somewhere in Kentucky, possibly ending up in Colorado in the next couple of weeks.